Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman from my Islamabad studios. Today we'll be touching upon a very, very important and rather sensitive issue as well. We'll be talking about the foreign policy of Pakistan and its future agenda. Now, when you talk about the foreign policy, the basic rule is to minimize the number of enemies and multiply the number of friends you have. But unfortunately, if you look at Pakistan and its foreign policy during the last, let's say, 10 years or so, what we have witnessed that whatever is going on with India, that's a separate chapter altogether. But with Afghanistan, it's pretty much ruined as far as the relationship between the two countries are concerned. When you talk about Bangladesh, we all know the kind of attitude they have. Forget about the Indian French, but that's a separate sovereign country, so that should be considered as a sovereign country. You talk about Iran, so the first thing which pops up in my mind is the statement of their army chief that they will get inside Pakistan and hit the targets. Yes, if there are such elements working inside the Pakistani area and trying to sort of create problems for the Iranians, they should definitely be talking to the Foreign Office or should be using the other means, but not issuing a statement like that. Then you talk about the Middle East. Now that is going to be the most interesting part of the program today because Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Yemen, Oman, Egypt, the current visit of the US President Donald Trump, that is very, very significant, very important. That has actually drawn lines now. So that is something pretty interesting, how to handle that side. You talk about China and Pakistan relationship, a recent incident in which two of the Chinese, whether they were preachers or teachers, that's a separate chapter, but there were two Chinese individuals who were abducted and later on they were killed. This was stated by the Home Minister of Balochistan, Mr. Bukti, Sarfraz Bukti. Now, that is also something of concern, and then there was a statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that nothing happened of that sort. I mean, because there were rumors rather, but obviously there was something. Then you talk about the new alignment, the current situation of the Americans, whom we always thought were very close to us. They were very close friends, whether they were strategic allies or they were transsectional partners or whatever you name them. But at the end of the day, they are closer to the Indians, and certain statements issued by their president even do not support Pakistan. Then you move on to the European side. I mean, I won't say dire states, but they are in the turmoil. I mean, look what is happening in France and Germany, for that matter, or even in UK. So, whether any Muslim is doing that or not, but still, a lot of Pakistanis live there, about 1 million, that's what we've learned even just in UK. So, European Union has its own issues with the Americans, with the current management, but still Pakistan isn't capitalizing on that front either. Forget about Africa and forget about the Latin Americans. I believe for us it is another world. Those two planets exist along with Antarctica and Australia in Mars, unfortunately. So let's start off with these basic countries. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab, his introduction as a senior former ambassador and a diplomat, sir. Thank you very much. And we have with us Dr. Aqab Malik. Again, his introduction as an expert on international relations. Dr. Sahab, thank you very much. First of all, sir, let's start off with the immediate neighbors, sir. The foreign policy of Pakistan. 4 neighbors: India, Afghanistan, Iran, and China. Sir.
First, I will give you the broad framework of what is foreign policy, and then I'll come to the neighbors.
Please.
The foreign policy of a country is a complex jigsaw puzzle of certain constants and a whole lot of variables. The constants are what the basic objectives of your foreign policy are. And for that, in that respect, you have to focus on your neighbors, first of all. Then for Pakistan, relations with the Muslim countries, and then relations with the big powers. These are the constants that we have to keep in mind. But what happens is that there are a whole lot of variables that keep changing the parameters of foreign policy and also the dynamics of foreign policy. Now, for example, when the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan took place, that was a variable that was not foreseen or that was not expected. But the Soviets decided to enter Afghanistan in 1979.
Correct.
And that is a new, that was a new situation that we had to deal with. Similarly, when 9/11 happened, so just quickly going over history.
2001.
In 2001, that was again a new development. In this way, foreign policy is constantly being challenged for dealing with situations that are not generally provided for. Now, in the present situation, as you mentioned, in regard to the neighbors, we have problems wherever we look. We had the abiding problem with India, and there the basic issue that developed since last year was the LOC violations, because there was a constant disturbance at the LOC.
Correct, sir.
And that is a tit for tat kind of a situation, and that aggravates the tension between the two countries. And with India, that also is aggravated by occasional statements by the Indian leaders and actions by the Indian leaders which are provocative. This burning situation in Kashmir, which has developed since last year, I mean, the uprising and the insurgency in Kashmir caught our attention, and we have to react to it. In regard to Afghanistan, it looked like things were going to be a little better with President Ashraf Ghani, but in due course of time, again our relations deteriorated. There was massive attacks. The APS, the Army Public School attack, was most likely carried out by people coming from Afghanistan.
Correct.
That led to the army chief going to
Afghanistan
right that very day to talk to them. And then so many other terrorism incidents that have taken place. It has soured relations, and the Afghans tend to put all the blame on Pakistan, and they do not want to coordinate with Pakistan, just as they torpedoed the Murray talks
with the Taliban,
with the Taliban. And then they have put a roadblock in many of the other peacemaking efforts that Pakistan has made. And finally, the icing on the cake was that conference on the Heart of Asia in Amritsar, in which the Afghan president was most he indulged in a most objectionable speech, in which he was wagging his finger at our advisor on foreign affairs. So, soured relations, bad relations. India, bad relations. With Iran, we have also certain...
So when you talk, let's do the dusting. Relationship doesn't mean that how friendly you are or how friendly you were. It depends on the interests. Look at the trade. It's under 1 billion. Despite the potential, forget about it. Their gas is ready to be used in Pakistan. They have built up the pipeline, but we are not capitalizing on that either. We are not even ready to do that, whether under the American influence or the pressure, or the Saudi for that matter.
Yeah.
Because we are inclined towards Saudi Arabia. Let's believe, admit it for a moment.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the current regime out there. Again, Mr. Rouhani has been elected. So if it wasn't that great, so that means it won't be that great either in the next 4 years as well. So
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, so with Iran, we are creating for ourselves problems by not addressing them properly with Iran. It is simple. One is border management, in my view. I mean, there will be other analysts who will say you look at it differently. But I think if we do good border management, and we develop trade relations, economic relations. Listen, I mean, for example, India and China are at loggerheads on many things, but they have good trade relations between them. So, I mean, the Saudis or whoever might be our other considerations will not object to trade developing, and that is something where Pakistan is lacking in in relations with most countries, and that I think is because we do not have in the Foreign Office an economic wing which is strong enough to
How long will it take? So it's been 70 years Pakistan was created. Now
steer
still,
your
I mean,
relay.
they have a beautiful library rather too.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, so I'll be very honest, because when it comes to Pakistan, I think nothing is more important to me than that. And honestly, I was thinking, because I was interviewing somebody there, and I just realized that, if it was India, they would have created a library bigger than this, just only in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And everybody would have been there, working hard just to make sure that, how can they damage Pakistan. And over there, not even a single person was there.
Right.
It's about the interest also. So it's
Yes.
not about the duty and the job and the Ramzan and, I'll be there only for 3 hours and then, I'll go home and sleep. It needs commitment, and we're not committed at every level. Forget about
That's
only
right.
that.
That is very
Aqab,
unfortunate.
let me put the same question to you, sir. These 4 countries, in your point of view, the neighbors.
I think more than anything else, we have to have follow a line where we have as minimal possible negative interaction with the countries around us, ideally. No doubt that's not been our history. Our history has been particularly turbulent as far as India is concerned, and now increasingly so as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Iran is in a position where it's finding itself contained a bit more, especially with the so-called Islamic military alliance, which they say is Islamic, but is actually anti-Iranian anyway. Because Iran is not part of that.
It's a reality, sir.
Let's be pragmatic about this. And Pakistan has been reticent in really joining this, which I think is something that we have to take account of, because that is in our interest not to inflame tensions with Iran, with another country that's on our borders. Yeah? In real terms, the only country that we have a very minor border with, that is in good relations with, and exceptionally good relations with, is China. But that's another kettle of fish, because that's dependent upon their strategic interest to assist Pakistan to develop primarily because they need us, and let's not kid ourselves, they need us to help them move forward as far as their trade is concerned, to find an access out into the Indian Ocean, for example, rather than circumventing different or going through different regions and much larger, etc. We've been through this many times. So when it comes down to our immediate neighbors, India is going to be ongoing. However, I also see that our now permanent membership and India's permanent membership of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization,
will it make any difference?
Is a positive development for both countries. Now, part of that organizational initiative is also that we have to conduct certain operations for training together. Look at that then. Imagine the
Indian
potential.
soldiers working with our soldiers.
It may not happen for a while, and the organizational, logistical issues are going to be very difficult, and the political issues, obviously, that come in the way. But imagine that one of the fundamental aspects of this organization is that we must engage in some training one way or another. And it's got to start from somewhere. The fundamental problems between the countries primarily because of interests of the countries towards Kashmir. And this organization may facilitate, but there's no guarantees in this. We can't just say this is going to happen, everything is going to be fine. No, there's no guarantees on this. We must use different pressures, we must use different leverages to obtain this end result, or some form of understanding coming about as far as Kashmir and towards an end resolution towards it. And it's not going to be anytime soon, but there is some possibility of that now arising because of the dual membership becoming permanent. And that brings us to another question then. Now that we're going to be part of that, a much larger economic and security organization in essence, we realize that the stakes as far as India is concerned are now going to be diverted. Now, if India finds that it's got more interest and stakes in building a regional infrastructure as far as economic infrastructure is concerned, it would deviate, or should I say, lessen the interest elsewhere, primarily United States. And that could actually increase relations between China and India, which also could make it a facilitator for us and India to build more confidence-building measures. But we know this has been topsy-turvy for many years, and there are no guarantees in this. But the possibilities now are there, and they're institutional as well. So when we look at that, I see some possibility of rejuvenating this region. And when OBOR, One Belt, One Road, really kicks in the next 10, 15 years, India will feel left out unless it takes a part of it. And India will be obliged to take a part of it because there's a large economic potential there and more prosperity as far as India is concerned. And the benefits to India are much greater than the negativity towards it or the detriments of it. So you're going to be pragmatic as far as the Indians are concerned. They may want to be much more greater participation in this One Belt, One Road, which we're looking towards kicking off and helping that. And other countries in Central Asia are rapidly and swiftly managing their own resource and infrastructures to build on that, like Kazakhstan, for example, and the linkages to the rest of Eurasia. They're all falling into place. It's a very big initiative, $1 trillion+ worth. Yeah?
Yeah.
Initial investment. Future investments are going to increase, no doubt. Why would you not want to be a part of that? And this is where you've got to be pragmatic. Your interests change over time.
Do you believe that that's the only hope for us? That's
Well, I don't think it's the only hope, but I think that we have no choice but to resolve our issues. We can go on like this for hundreds of years, and what is it going to do to us?
Party B, and you're ready to sort out your problems,
Yes.
but the party B
Is not willing to.
is not willing to.
So
That's
we
the
got to
problem.
look at their interests and why, and what is it that really gives them angst, and what compromises can
There's
be
an
made at the
absolute
limits.
clash of interest on anything. For example, starting from Kashmir, all the way to Silk Creek, to Siachen, to you name it.
It's
the
all well and
problem is
good, but look at the interests that they're going to gain, and look at the change in economic dynamics over the next decades. Yeah, and they're going to be party to that, and not sidelined and circumvented from that.
When he took charge of India, the basic slogan was about economy, and that it was one of the primary reasons that all these Ambanis and Mittals and Tatas, they supported him, and they've actually supported him financially also to win the elections. But he has delivered, but not to that level which was expected from him. The Gujarat model couldn't actually convert.
Because India is a much larger entity.
That is exactly what the
much more
problem
complex.
is. Exactly. Now, the next election would be in another year and a half, right, sir?
19.
19. That means this is 2007, year and a half.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that I'm sure something is brewing in his mind also, and he's going to play his cards wisely. He's a wise man as far as the ingredients of a politician is concerned. I think he's got most of them, but he does lack. I mean, he has problems as well. But what I'm saying is that at the same time, there's going to be an election in Pakistan. Most likely, everybody says that Mia Nawaz Sharif is going to win again.
There's no substantial alternative, really. Is
So yeah, so practically then these two countries need to move forward, and another 6 to 8 years for these both countries till 2025 are really crucial, because things are really happening all around you and on a very rapid pace. So that is something of real concern. Now, sir, moving on to USA now. USA, Mr. Donald Trump being the president, good, bad, or ugly, we don't care. But the problem is that Mr. Trump is there. And we all know his attitude, the kind of language he uses, the kind of, he thinks United States of America is a $1 trillion industry and he's the CEO.
Yeah.
Not realizing that that $1 trillion industry is actually the most powerful country in the world.
Yes.
And his decisions do matter to the rest of the world. The kind of engagement he made during his first foreign visit in Saudi Arabia, then to Jerusalem, and then to Vatican City. Whether that was ideally based on the religious purposes or not, that's a separate chapter. But what we heard, what we saw, what we witnessed was something which wasn't that appealing for us, sir.
Yeah. Donald Trump, as a campaigner for the White House, was generally hostile to the Muslims and was talking in very
Her anti-Muslim sentiments, yes?
very derogatory terms about Muslims, basically because he thought and he thinks probably that all terrorism emanates from the Muslim countries. Now, that was a very simplistic view. And when he
banning the Muslims from entering USA,
yeah,
he immediately did
and
that
banning
also.
6 countries and all that. Though the wrong 6 countries, because
They have got nothing to do with that. I mean, that's the
the
problem.
terrorism incidents against Americans were in Lebanon, in Egypt,
token.
in
Yes.
Yemen,
UAE,
in
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. So he got it wrong. But anyway, he showed his attitude. Then in this particular, when he came to office, he realized that this is too simplistic, and he has to address the Muslim world, and he has to deal with them in a more
Civilized way.
Persuasive manner. So that resulted in his first foreign visit to Saudi Arabia. But again, he has sown the seeds of discord within the Muslim world by targeting Iran. And that is not even if he thought that Iran is a country which was sponsoring terrorism or financing terrorism, he should not have actually directed all his attacks against one particular country. That is basically a fundamental rule of diplomacy, that you don't act so directly or tactlessly. This is lack of tact. Now, he is now modulating his position regarding Qatar, for example. Rex Tillerson, in his statement, said that there are humanitarian aspects of the embargo against Qatar.
Obviously, sir. And you talk about food, 80% of the food is coming from Saudi Arabia. Yeah?
And he said
water
that
even.
We think that it should be ameliorated. This should not be allowed to be like this. There should be some modification or adjustment in the policy of the Arab states which are against Qatar, and who have cut off relations with Qatar. So, you know, there are constant changes in their thinking. There is no clarity in the new administration. So, the Trump administration is likely to be bumbling its way, because this is, you know, when you don't know what you're doing, then at one time you do one thing, at another time you do another thing. So they will continue to be learning by trial and error and finding out what is right, what is wrong. And that is to the detriment, because they are, as you said, a huge military power. The preponderant military power in the world today remains, despite all the shortcomings or shortfalls that have developed in their military strength. They still remain the biggest military power in the world. So, if they don't use this properly, then, as they say...
Do you think they use that as a tool, as an edge over the others?
Yeah, but...
Like selling $350 billion worth of arms and immediate, deals of 110 billion for that matter.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, I mean, obviously they want, because people normally talk, and then they said, Faisal, these are all conspiracies. No, these are not conspiracies. The pharmaceutical industry, the arm makers, or at any level,
yeah,
starting from Lockheed Martin all the way down to Glock for the man. And then you talk about their agriculture produce. You talk about their technological advancements. You just name it, and they are at the top of the world.
Yes,
there is no doubt.
So the administration is dealing with the Muslim countries in a very strange fashion, and they have so much to offer, and they can have cooperation with all. That's what Obama tried to do with Iran, that he wanted to open the doors for cooperation, and that would have opened up markets for the US industry as well, for their agriculture as well. This is something that the Trump administration is not yet realizing, and that is to the detriment of the Muslim world and to detriment of all of us. So, regarding Pakistan, you see, we were under a double jeopardy, with double whammy. One was anti-Muslim, the other was a great friend of India, of Hinduism, of Hindutva. He said all these things. So, Pakistan is at the wrong end of both these
technically, yes,
issues. So, he is still not defining what he wants Pakistan to be doing. For example, the strategic dialogue with Pakistan is stalled. The last one was held under Obama's administration, and we don't know when or if the new another round of strategic dialogue will be held with Pakistan. But the catch here for them is that Afghanistan is a situation which requires the presence of Pakistan.
But sir, don't you think that they're happy even without our assistance? I mean, the Indians, they are playing their role.
Yeah,
They
but
have
they
Iran, I mean, indirectly, not directly, but indirectly involved there as well. And then there are so many other non-state actors in their control.
Yes, but Mattis
Functioning,
knows.
I mean, well, I would say.
Mattis, their defense secretary, knows Pakistan's importance. And
But he's
Pentagon,
been there, he knows.
Pentagon is going to be determining much of the policy vis-a-vis Afghanistan. So their Pakistan cannot be ignored, and they will have to engage with Pakistan. And that is why even the Russians and the Chinese regard Pakistan very important, as he said about the SCO. You see, in the SCO, there is talk of a revival of the quadrilateral consultative group, QCG.
Yes, I remember.
So, at one time this was completely discarded that no, this won't work. Pakistan is trying to manipulate with this. But the wisdom of it is now coming out in the... So, the Americans will also realize that they have to work
Actually,
towards...
that could have produced very, very, I mean, you know, important and desired results, I would say.
Yes.
The group, you know, China, Russia, Pakistan.
Yes,
and all.
yes, exactly. So, I think in due course of time, this will become apparent, and then they will have a more realistic policy towards Pakistan.
Hopefully, yeah, they do. Now, so moving on to this new alliance. I mean, a lot of people do say that, you know, see, General Rahil Sharif, when he was the Chief of Army Staff, went to Russia to sign a military deal. And then my own coastmates who were posted in Jaklala, they told me, you know, when these soldiers from Russia came for the joint exercises, remember? Joint military exercises. I mean, the way they were welcomed, honestly, because he's the man in charge there, and he said, we really welcome. He didn't even check what they're bringing, honestly, and they were given such respect, and they were taken to a place where other military officials do not visit. I'm talking about Chirat. And they did their, whether you call it practice or exercise or whatever, I mean, or of that level. So, and they really appreciated the kind of, and when they went back, I mean, they were really happy. So that was like, we never thought that Russian military would be doing joint exercise with the Pakistani army inside Pakistan, and then be like, so things are changing, dynamics are changing, and realities are changing too. Pakistan and Russia, how do you see them moving forward?
It's a very touchy subject, this is. Depends which perspective you use. Our interests are more aligned than they have been for decades.
Expecting Vladimir Putin to come to Islamabad
That's not going to happen.
and issue a strong statement.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think the Russians are very careful about what they do. And Vladimir Putin is a strategic architect in his own right. He's able to dominate and win certain issues like, such as Crimea and Ukraine and Georgia, for example, and Syria maybe even.
Yeah.
So he's done as far as that's
a new battleground for them.
And he wants a certain form of engagement where they take the lead as far as peace negotiations are concerned, and they're working with the Taliban as far as talking to them, negotiate with them on this. And maybe something will come about, but there's no certainty on that. But as far as Pakistan and Russia are concerned, there's a lot of alignment in the fact that because CPEC is a reality now, and more countries are getting involved in the One Belt, One Road. That means that you can't really negate it anymore, even though you may stick a finger in here or there. Certain countries are trying to do this and to upset this momentum that's been taking shape. It's not going to happen. Too many countries are interested in fulfilling...
look at the summit that was held in China. I mean, look at the amount of head of states that were there.
In essence, they want some prosperity. They want to get out of this rut that the world is in constant conflict and anguish. And they want to have a different development. They want to change the dynamics. And this fundamentally comes to when you were talking about Trump. And the difference between Trump and Obama is all about perspective. A more realpolitik, hardcore, realist strategy perspective is being used by the Trump administration, as opposed to what Obama was, which is more co-engagement, engaging other nations and building bridges, which is more liberalism and in liberal institutionalism, which means that you build bridges and you share certain interests to build relations, to have, which is also about self-preservation, because when you have friends, you're able to share and move forward. When you have enemies, you're all about defensive postures and maintaining what you have or increasing the military aspect to the detriment of the prosperity of the nation as well. So I think there was a turnaround during Obama's administration, which has changed now. because the mindset has changed as far as Trump is concerned. And that comes into this, doesn't it? And the perception they play upon Pakistan's relationship with Russia, because there are many advocates of the United States becoming friendlier with Pakistan, and those people in that lobby would be partially opposed to the Pakistan-Russian lobby, primarily because of the Russian and American relations. So it is a wider picture that you have to look at. And European-Russian relations. Look at what's happening in the European Union. Europe has said that they need to go separate. They have to go their own way. They can't rely on their former allies.
Correct.
And current allies like the United States and Britain. So they may have to make relationships, like Macron in France has said, we're willing to talk with Putin. And we'll see what happens in the elections in Germany as well. And the dynamics are different now. So everything's quite complex, and we have to judge our relationship with Russia in accordance to the wider global dynamics as well, but also based upon our interests and their interests and how they align. And I think it's positive because SEO is involved now. And that's a formal arrangement between us.
It's a formal arrangement.
And so that increases relationship.
These four countries,
building, I mean, does it not?
The nuclear states are there, talk about Russia, China, Pakistan, India.
You see,
But do you think the SCO can actually create that kind of influence, or rather persuade India to behave?
Well, you see, this is what I was talking about earlier on, is about India reassessing its own interests. Now, if India is given access to resources and financial gain, for example, that would outweigh by far having conflict with Pakistan, what would it do? We talk about interest. Former enemies make friends because mutual gain comes in there, and it far outweighs former animosities and former differences. And things do change.
But you have to make sure that those issues or problems should have proper remedies, and those should be
obviously,
taken
you've
care
got
of.
to be intelligent how you do it, and you have to have foresight. You have to look further ahead, and you have to engage with other nations. It's not just going to be a bilateral issue now. Other nations will inevitably get involved because this is a form of an alliance, as the SEO is, and it's a mutual concern from many of the parties in Central Asia, and Russians and Chinese, for example, and maybe Iran in the future. And as a result, all their interests are involved to maintain this relationship and maintain this this economic alliance to an extent. And as a result, if there are issues between certain nations within that, they must be able to resolve them, but then inevitably they would get involved because they want to enhance each other. Their interests are at stake then, because now they're going to become increasingly a party to that on their interests, and we're going to interlink increasingly so. And this is where OBOR comes in. It was inevitable that Pakistan had to come in, and India was going to, because it's a massive economy. It is likely to become the second largest economy in the next few decades, far surpassing the United States as well. It's projected to do so.
India.
The World Economic Forum has projected that. Yeah. Much bigger, because it's got a large potential if it can resolve and remedy its own issues.
It's just about the middle class. The size of middle class
So-
is bigger
so-
than
so-
the total.
so-
It's larger than the total population
So
of
look
Europe.
at this. Look at it this way. Everything's moving towards Asia. Why is India trying to be separate? It doesn't make sense,
They
really, does
can't.
it?
They
It doesn't
can't
make sense.
even if they
India
want to, they can't.
inevitably will have to come into play with this and have to remedy its own self, and it has to make some compromises because there are greater gains out there. And I'm a proponent of a one world government, and eventually, decades and decades and decades, maybe centuries down the line. But we've got to start somewhere, because in the end, we're all human beings, and we all have to get on. And this tribalism that drives the separation of states, for example, now you've got the European Union. There may be the odd hurdle here or there, like Britain, for example. Yeah. But essentially, look at what it's done for the stability of Europe. After hundreds of years of conflict, turmoil, and millions dead, it's allowed relative peace in Europe.
At the end of the day, yeah.
And that is an absolute result. And if you've got other nations doing the same thing, you can move on from your present day, and you move on to a wider vision. And these large groupings of economic blocks maybe can form mutual alliances between each other, these large blocks, and it comes together. The world comes together. I've been talking about this, and I'm writing about this now. The world comes together. And now when you realize this is the end result, why are we wasting time? Why are we wasting time?
I mean, this is what we think. Obviously, there
are many hurdles.
There are issues on both sides. It's
There
not
are
only
many
India
hurdles.
which is to be blamed.
But
Obviously, we do
it's a political
because
will.
if you look
The
at it
political
from
will
their
has to be there as well
perspective,
on
they've
both
got some
sides.
very legitimate concerns too. whether we like it or we don't. Now last question, because I really want a detailed answer from both of you. At the end of the day, so what I've understood is that it's back to square one, and it's Pakistan and India. Afghanistan is going to be fine. Bangladesh is going to be fine. Iran is going to be a good neighbor. The Muslim countries, they'll have a better influence. But one thing is for sure, that India doesn't want it. Forget about the future generations, how they will think, because there's certain channels that, you know, they're just there to make sure. Aqab Goswami, for that matter, I was reading an article. I mean, characters like him are planted to make sure that, you know, these two countries should remain hostile.
Yeah.
Make sure that their retired army officers and Air Force officers should be vocal, and yours should do the same. And make sure that there should no trade take place. You know, I mean, there's no trade basically. I mean, obviously there's smuggling, which is more than the documented trade. That is exactly with Iran. That is exactly with Afghanistan. Wow, we should clap for that. But now the interesting part is, sir, that as long as these two countries do not sort out their issues, nothing can happen in this part of the region. Whether you call it the Indian Ocean or Afro-Asian Ocean or whatever you may name it, the water won't change its color. But the problem is, it's a reality. We can't put Pakistan in Latin America. We can't pick up India and place it somewhere in Europe. I wish I could do, but you can't do that. Now the problem is, sir, back to square one, Pakistan and India. Issues are there when you talk about Kashmir, because they are headstrong, we are headstrong. We both have a very strong position on that. Sir Creek can be sorted out, not a big deal if they wish. CHN, yes sir, can be sorted out. Water, that issue can be managed, not a big deal at all. LOC violation, I mean, it's a matter of holding your trigger, sir. That is it. Don't push it inch.
SOP is made more strict.
Simple, simple. But the Indians, they have a perception. They say, because I've been to India, I've spoken to many people there.
They won't let me in.
No, you know, next time they won't do that either.
They won't let me in.
They'll consider me a spy or something, and then I don't want to go again. I've seen Taj Mahal, good enough. Now the point is that basically, they believe that when there is a military government, because they believe that this is their perception, the only military decides about India.
That is
their basic perception, that the military decides.
Well, is there
in this issue.
Is there perception, and that is a narrative that they want to sell, because that makes it easier for them to be anti-Pakistan. When they say that it's, you know, the military, the civilian government is trying its best, but they can't do anything. Therefore,
they even say this now.
Therefore, we have to be, we cannot have good relations with Pakistan. So that gives them an excuse. Now, I think India...
And diplomatically an edge also, sir.
Yeah.
Because this is what they sell.
Yes.
And honestly, even when you talk to ambassador station here in Pakistan, and you know, they'll actually talk the same language, unfortunately.
Yeah. In fact, I personally think that it is in the military's interest to keep this facade of civilian prominence going. Even if they want to be very tough with India, they should let the civilian side do that, not them. Now, in the first place, I think India-Pakistan, when you raised it, the issue of Kashmir, I think, is nearing a kind of climax, in the sense that it is only now that we can push it. Suppose we ignore what's happening in Kashmir and we let another 5 years pass, then there is not much chance.
It's now or never?
It's now or never. And therefore, it is important that we highlight it. And I think the way we have to highlight it is that we must highlight or bring out the massive human rights violations in Kashmir. We should say, you know, forget about India, Pakistan. You look at a people suffering under oppressive rule.
It's unbelievable, sir. I go through those visuals and they're unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Shocking. And on an ongoing basis.
Even Israelis.
It is not relented for months and months. And even Israel, with all its atrocities against the Palestinians, has never continued like this. It has done things for a while, and then it has tried to be more sort of less militaristic. Now here, this has been going on and on and on for, this is now into the second year of the insurgency. So this issue, I think, will force itself upon the
At least you can, yeah.
relationship.
And plus the Indian opposition and the Indian intellectuals and the Indian media, I mean, they're also witnessing that.
Yes.
And I receive all these, I mean, on Facebook and, you know, all those links and everything. And obviously, this is a serious concern within India now.
Within India now.
Doctor?
So this is, it won't.
So before you talk, I mean, somebody, in fact, gave me a suggestion, and he said you should, you know, raise it and let's see what would be the reaction of your guests. He said, you know what Pakistan should do now, since we are in the finals, they've been, you know, now they were dying hard to play the final with us. Earlier we were dying hard to play with them. Yeah. So both these countries, they refused. So what, you know, what we should do, that since Pakistan and India are in the finals of the Champions Trophy in England, Pakistan should go in the ground and should boycott playing with India and should step out, saying that they are committing human rights violations in Kashmir, and raise this issue. Now, this is the best way to raise. I mean, this was his perception.
That's an interesting idea.
Not a bad idea, actually. This is what I said. I said the whole world will know this is what India is doing.
Yeah. But
and not play.
But this can turn the other way. It depends how you twist it, yeah, and you spin it. It's political spin, isn't it? Really. And sport.
So if you can boycott playing
sport,
hockey in Russia,
but that's all well
on political grounds.
But it's all well and good.
Best up, am I right or wrong?
Yeah. But then, but Pakistan is going to be politicizing sport, and
this is exactly what I'm saying. But
the problem is, as far as cricket is concerned, the fact that we're playing with India, given all our problems, we've risen above the animosities. We're saying we're going to engage, we're going to be better. But we should do that. And if we go around saying we're not going to do, I understand that. The Americans did this when they boycotted the Olympic Games.
Even if they are handed over the trophy.
Russian invasion of Afghanistan.
Even if they are handed over the trophy.
This is a main,
we don't mind.
But it's a decision.
But the issue would be raised.
But it will be raised, and the people are aware of it. But the fact of the matter is, it could turn the other way.
Imagine the diaspora in Kashmir.
But if it's not managed properly, it can turn the other way. And you know very well that our lobbies are not as strong as Indian lobbies.
That is indeed.
And
but at least this is going to become
twist
the lead
how
story.
How are you going to spin it?
And people would...
The psychological warfare that's been played...
Why the Saudis are telling the Qataris to shut down Al Jazeera? Because media plays the most vital role.
It does. So we've got to be lobbying the right places first.
But unfortunately, our government hasn't. I mean, not blaming the PMLN or PPP or any other government. Throughout history,
they're just not being good at it.
I mean, the credit goes to Musharraf then. You know why? Because he opened up the media. At least the voice is there.
Well, Shah Rukh opened the media and then it went against him, and that was the end of him.
What happened to Musharraf?
But that's the same, you see.
Good enough.
But it's good. It's good. It's a step in the right direction. It's progress. Although we need to have certain control over the media as well. So when we come back to the original question, which was on Kashmir, yeah. And you're right about this. And it can't go on forever. And we're watching people suffer continuously. And we're sitting in our seats and just watching. But whilst they're suffering, we need to be able to push their cause forward in every forum whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the media, this is how you do it. And you need to highlight it everywhere. Everywhere. And make the Indians understand what they're doing and make their population understand what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, this is an opportunity which we have got. Let's see whether we... I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this was just
it's tough,
but it's tough, but that can produce results.
Yes.
Honestly speaking, yes.
Every forum in the world.
This is going to be
we can,
the
and it's
ace
cheaper.
That you have
cheaper than firing a few rounds of shells. Yeah?
Anyway,
it's cheaper than that. You just have to engage minds.
Engage minds, and this.
That's it. The right minds.
Let's hope. Let's hope. I mean, things do settle down. But thank you very much, Dr. Aqab. Thank you very much, Ambassador. It was a pleasure having both of you. And that's all we have for this week. And I'll see you, inshallah, on Monday. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz from our side.